Welcome to the space for transformational leaders to unleash their magic, see better client results, work lighter, and live source. Hello and welcome. I'm here with Gayle Nowak, and I'm so excited to introduce you to her and talk a little bit about what it is to be a human in this life and what could be different if we do our inner work. Let me just tell you a little bit about Gayle. Imagine a world full of healthy, whole people, no longer afraid to live and lead as their true self. That's the vision that inspires and motivates Gayle Nowak to support new earth leaders to break through silencing influences that stand in the way of their truest expression. Gayle believes everyone deserves to feel seen and heard, especially in a world that teaches us to be fake. The first step on the path to conscious visibility is to stop hiding our true self. Doing so takes courage, commitment, and inner work in order to live and lead in this way. When we individually and collectively dare to speak up and claim space in a healthy, authentic way, we up-level and reshape how we live in, work with, and relate to self, others, and the planet. Through transformational workshops, retreats, energy healing sessions, and coaching, Gayle weaves nearly 3 decades of marketing experience and expertise with energy work and transformational experiences that guide and support clients as they make their mission and movement more visible in the world. So Gayle, as I'm introducing you and I'm thinking about, your past life as a PR expert and writer and, creator of all kinds of press and media in the world, I wanted to bring that forward. Like, how has that influenced you in your mission to help people actually be themselves?
That's a great question. So I'm thinking about my career in PR, and I think that some of the most powerful moments for me were those moments where our clients, or even our clients' clients, were really being in a very compassionate and healing state, sort of just naturally, and sharing stories. The story piece is really the piece that has kind of been the through line for me throughout my career. Even before my career, I was really into writing stories and creative writing. And I remember actually being with one of our clients. She's the world expert on body dysmorphic disorder. And she got on Oprah. And I remember being in the audience because we were part of her entourage, helping her prepare for that and do all the behind the scenes preparation for her to be a guest expert on Oprah's show about body dysmorphic disorder. And I remember sitting there and thinking, wow, these guests who are on the stage who are suffering with this and are able to talk to this doctor who's an expert and who has very limited capacity, right? And to be in Oprah's care in the process of that, and then to have that be something that's shared with Oprah's audience, like the power of just getting that out there and getting that known. And I just remember thinking, like, there's probably so many people who are going through this right now, and they maybe feel helpless. They don't know what to do. They maybe don't understand what it is. And to be able to be in that moment with Oprah, with this expert, these people who have body dysmorphic disorder, and recognize like how healing those stories are on that level, and that somebody out there, somebody who's listening, maybe now has a little bit of hope. And so that, I mean, I would say that's probably the crowning moment of being in PR. It was so much more, up until that point, I was kind of like, well, what does this really mean? Like, you're pitching products or you're pitching services, and, you're spinning stories. But that for me was like, okay, that's what this is all about, is really elevating that message.
The way you're describing it, it makes me think of a transformational retreat in a way, right? Like when someone really gets to that vulnerable place of speaking their truth, the whole room gets access to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. Okay, so I like to ask everyone in these interviews 2 questions. The first is, what has it meant to you to be a sourced leader? Like, what does that mean for you in your work?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it means a lot of things for me. I think the first thing, it means being open to the flow of life. I would say I'm a recovering control freak. Yeah. And going through the process of becoming a sourced leader really helped me relax and be receptive to life, and to really trust life on a much deeper level.
And what is it about being sourced for you that helps you to relax and be more receptive and trust? Since someone listening may or may not have we haven't defined what it is to be sourced. So
right. Yeah, it's really, I think a lot of my life, growing up and even into adulthood, I often felt like I was just sort of left to figure things out on my own, and didn't feel like I had maybe the support that I needed. And that can feel really isolating. And it makes you want to control things, right? Because you have to kind of figure things out on your own. You can become so self-reliant. And at the same time, it's kind of exhausting to have to hold that all the time. So for me, I just have a different sense now of being held and supported, and recognizing like that doesn't always have to come in the form of a human, right? That's really being connected to source, and some people connect to guides and everything, but for me, it's really being connected to that source energy, father, creator, whatever you want to call it, and strengthening and deepening that bond, that even when things kind of go a little awry, it helps me get grounded and centered, and remember, like, okay, you're safe, you're protected. If you need support, you can ask for support, and source has got your back.
Beautiful. So I'll use that to go into the question 2, which is, I have a vision of a world where everybody's sourced, right? Like I always picture it like people are wearing the t-shirts, right? Like, hey, I live this way. So I'm going to use your words, in a world where everybody feels held and supported. What changes?
What changes? Everything changes. Everything changes. Because I feel like when we're in that place, not only, I think it changes the baseline of how we be. There's less fear, there's less scarcity, there's more compassion, for ourselves and for others. And even when we get knocked off course, we know how to come back into balance. And so it becomes less about, you did this to me, or I don't like this, and you're wrong and I'm right. It becomes less about that and more just about being able to acknowledge and receive somebody in their humanity and in their divinity. And I just think that we relate in a different way, we create in a different way.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about living as your true self. And, I'm thinking when you talked about being in PR and like, we're just spinning things to sell products, but then there were the interviews and the people who were more being true. I'm going to use that word. Why is this such a passion for you? And like, what does it mean to be your true self in the world?
Well, it's important to me because for a long time I wasn't being my true self. I don't necessarily see it as like you flip a switch and suddenly you're your true self, right? Like it's an ongoing process. And when we're wearing those masks, we think it's protecting us. And sometimes it does. But then when it becomes sort of like your default, as we talk about in Source, your default pattern, your default sort of mode of operation, then you start to limit your experience in life. And for me, what was going on is in my early to mid 40s, like I was just there were so many masks. I had a lot of sort of chameleon energy, very adaptable, which can be a good thing sometimes. But it really left me feeling empty inside. And
relate to being adaptable.
Yeah. And not feeling alive, and it really, I didn't know it at the time, but it really came down to like, oh, I'm being all, I thought I was being authentic. And I think on some level I was, but I was also being all the things that other people wanted me to be. Because I thought that that's what would make them happy.
I find we don't really know the parts of ourselves we don't know until we know them.
Right.
We're doing our best.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And so what would you say to someone who, wants to be more themselves, wants to be more and, be less in that trying to figure out what people want? What's your advice around that?
Yeah. My advice around that really comes from my own experience. So I think you can get there in different ways. And I think the biggest shift for me came from really recognizing that my voice matters, my needs matter, my feelings matter. And even though at that time, I didn't even know how to name feelings or needs, or, I didn't even know how to express that, but just knowing that they do matter instead of like this narrative of like, well, it doesn't matter anyway, so I might as well just do and be the person that these people want me to be, right? There has to be like this catalyst, I think, to kind of shake up and help you release your attachment to that pattern.
This idea of like, it doesn't matter anyway versus my needs matter. Like, how do you help someone wrap their mind around that? Because I'm thinking in the world, I might think, well, my needs just take up space, right? They might bother people. They might get in the way, tone it down. So if it's true, my needs matter, why is that true?
Because we're here. a lot of what I see in my work it revolves around this. It revolves around like this sense of a fear of hurting other people, right? Or of getting hurt, a fear of disappointing others, a fear of being judged by others. And really at a deeper level of that, it's really sort of this fear around losing our sense of safety around people. And so I think that part of the narrative, the inner narrative that people struggle with is like, well, it's like an either or prospect. If my needs matter, then that means someone else's needs don't matter. And it's actually not true. It's not true. And I think that that's part of, just having that awareness and recognizing, okay, it's a both and, right? It's not that if I step up and speak up and claim space that somebody else has to lose in that process. It's like, well, actually they might be losing in that process by me not being true.
Yeah. Yeah, because what if your needs create some kind of grand adventure
right.
that other people get to go on?
Right.
So,
yeah.
You work with, you call it New Earth leaders. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. New Earth leaders to me are those of us who are really committed to relating in a different way with each other, really committed to doing our inner work and getting serious about who we really are as a soul, and then engaging with each other to create and collaborate and be in community in a way that is really based on love and compassion and acceptance and acknowledgement. And that's really what it means to me. It's very heart-based. It's very compassionate. And I would say committed, committed to being different in the world. I feel like we're starting to come out of this cycle of a lot of distortion and social conditioning. And that's not New Earth, right? Like that's not the New Earth paradigm.
When you're working with these leaders and they're coming to you and they've gotten different advice out there in the world, I know you've gotten lots of advice, I've gotten lots of advice. What's one piece of advice you've heard about success that you disagree with?
The piece of advice that really kind of rubs me the wrong way is this fake it till you make it message. Part of the reason why that bothers me, I mean, I've done it. I've used that advice and it's served me on some level, but it's like a false confidence. And there's something to be said about just sort of owning where you're at to clear the energy. Like how is it different to walk up on a stage and maybe share with the audience, like, hey, I'm actually a little nervous here, instead of walking up with it and, speaking and acting in a way that you don't actually feel, because the audience is going to feel it anyway. Mm-hmm. They're going to feel the misalignment anyway.
Yeah. So naming what's true.
Yeah.
I love it. And then in your work with people, you talked about your passion for storytelling and your background. How do you navigate with people sharing their foundational business story when there's traumatic experiences that are a part of what created the story? How do you do this? Like, how do you deal with the trauma, right? Without re-traumatizing yourself as a speaker or people in the audience? Because I know you love to help people with their shadow work and really resolving that trauma.
Yeah. And I would say, really the first step is being clear that you've healed or have healed to a certain level what the experience is about, right? So that's the first step, is really just checking in with yourself and where you're at with that healing process. And if it's still, there's a difference between it, like maybe making you emotional versus like if you're feeling trauma responses and triggers in your body, like listen to that, right? Because that may be a signal that like this isn't the time. It might not be the wrong story, but it might not be the right time because there's more healing work to be done. It's also being really clear about who the story serves and why, and being really clear about where you're going to share that story and when you're going to share that story and the parts that you're going to share. So there's a process of really being clear in your own boundaries about who gets to hear it, like who you're going to share with and what exactly you're going to share about that story. That's not really how I went about sharing my own story. It was actually fairly traumatizing for me.
I'm really curious about, I feel like I want a personal example, like what's been your journey with this?
Yeah.
Because that feels like it's a great advice. And then I know like you've been on the front lines walking this path. So
yeah. I mean, for me, so 2 years into my business, this was like 8 years ago, I kept having this message, this nudge of like, you've got to tell your story. And I knew exactly what it was referring to. I mean, it was, for me, when I was young, I grew up in a toxic and dysfunctional and abusive family. And it was safe for me to be invisible. It was safe for me to not have needs, right? And so I kept getting clients who also had traumatic experiences as part of the reason why they were doing the work that they were doing, and being able to hold that space for them. And so there were so many times that I would be working with clients on their story and they'd be like, I've never told anybody this, right? And so there was a knowing of like, okay, they feel safe with me. And also noticing the pattern of like, this keeps coming up. And also noticing my own resistance to this message of like, you've got to tell your story about your childhood, about, your abuse and all of that. And I was like, I don't see how it didn't make sense up here. Like, I don't see how any of this is connected. And it was one of those things where it was like, you're not going to see how it connects until you actually do the thing. And so I was getting like this big push, but there was healing that I still needed to do around it. I'm sure that there were people out there who could have supported me with this process, but I didn't have that. I didn't know to seek that out. And I just sort of pushed through it. The results that I got sort of validated the message. Like the month before I told my story, I had made like $14. And then within 3 weeks of telling my story, I got 3 new clients. I made the most and the fastest amount of money in my business that I had at that time, which was like almost $8,000. And so it was like, oh, okay, you got my attention. But it still was really uncomfortable. It didn't feel good in my body. I was shaky with it. And it was because some of it was still the healing work that needed to be done. And then it was also those other pieces around like, who gets to hear this? How are you going to tell it? How much are you going to tell? And over the years, I've worked with that. But in the beginning, it really was like a little bit like deer in the headlights. And it would make me feel like I would feel sick leading up to it. And then I'd feel sick afterwards. And I'd be all up in my head of like, is this going to hurt somebody? Is this going to offend somebody? All of that. Right. And it doesn't have to be that way. Right. It doesn't have to be that way when you have this healing in place, when you're clear about no, actually, I totally get how this serves and who this serves.
Well, and so where is that for you now? And like if someone has abuse in their background, right? Like I'm even noticing here, that wasn't the story that we started with.
Yeah.
Like how do you advise someone to make that decision of when to share, where to share, and does it ever get easier?
For me, it's gotten a lot easier.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I think that part of it is the more that you share it and the more that you see the impact, the positive impact that it has, it does get easier. It sometimes is as simple as that. And like there's been, I know for me personally on the internal side, on the inner work side, like there's been more layers that have come up that makes it feel complete and resolved so that it's not triggering anymore.
Yeah.
At all.
The more you tell it, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
And the more people reflect back to you. Like, have you had someone reach out and share how your story has made a difference? Kind of similarly to the body dysmorphia?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's in interesting ways. The first time I actually told that story, it was like really all kinds of sourced experiences were going on. When that happened, I took the stage, the lights went out. So that in and of itself kind of shook me. I was already like wigged out and amped up, and then the lights go off and I was like, oh. Right. And it was in a room of like 50 women. It was the first time on the stage, like sharing it, live like that and in public. And it was at a 2-day event. And there was a woman, a lot of people reflected right in that moment after I got off the stage. But there was this one woman in particular, like it always amazes me, like what it opens up for people and how. She talked to me afterwards, but then we connected over the weekend after the event. And she said, I had a speaking engagement the next day. Mm-hmm. And I had never really, she's a lesbian and she had never really talked about that. She goes and speaks at schools, middle schools, high schools. And she was like, I've never really been comfortable necessarily sharing that publicly. And I did this time. And part of it was like, kind of, I'm coming out with this abuse story. She's coming out with, her sexuality in a public way.
When I first came out, I had a talk and I knew this was like the most alive thing I could talk about. I had a breakout session scheduled at a big event, and I made a slide, and there was a point in the talk where I was like, okay, here's where I'm going to share this story. And it was really a story about kind of getting this signal from the universe and following it. But for me, it happened to be about my sexuality. And so I put this slide, nobody would have known what it meant. It was a cue for me, like, I'm either going to say this here or not. And I knew it was there. It was like, probably a third of the way in. And so I'm just like giving the talk, but the whole time I'm thinking about this slide is going to come up and I'm going to have to make this decision. And what am I going to do? Am I going to say it? Am I not? But I gave myself the out. And then I did end up sharing, and it was really helpful for people. And I didn't know, same thing. It's like, well, how is this actually connected?
Yeah.
And what percent of people are going to have a similar story? Very few. But it helped people to start to think about their own places where they weren't honoring what was true for them.
Yeah, exactly. And so the other piece of that story, of her sharing that story, the piece, God, just thinking about it, it still kind of gets me a little bit. She said that there was I think it was 7th graders that she was talking to. And she said that there was a boy who came up to her afterwards. And he said, oh my God, I'm going to get emotional. He said, up until this point, I really don't like gays, but I really like you.
Mm.
And it was like that, that moment where that it's influencing, it's changing hearts and minds, right?
It's creating a safer place for people to be themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And coming back to where you started about kind of being control freak, if we're trying to control how people respond and what they think and what it does, we miss that opportunity to open hearts and minds.
Right.
Because we have no idea really how it's going to land.
Yeah. Yeah. And to go back to the New Earth leaders, like, I think that's really kind of the mission, is to open hearts and minds.
Yeah. And to tie it back to really being sourced or held and supported. Like, if you got the message, tell your story, right? Can you just trust that that's the message?
Right. Exactly.
Beautiful. So Gayle, I know you have a gift for people. Do you want to tell them a little bit about Talk to Your Heart?
Yeah. So I have a Talk to Your Heart meditation and assessment. And so this is really, it helps you connect to your heart energy. So I know that was really something that was a challenge for me in the beginning of, I was so armored up and just so like, I don't want to be vulnerable and kind of locked down. But once I started to open up that heart, it's like a whole new world opened up for me. So I know a lot of people, they close their heart because they've been wounded or hurt or rejected or what have you. So this is really an exercise that just allows you to give yourself that time and that space to reconnect with your heart, or if you are like connected and open-hearted, it's also an opportunity to just sort of assess, like, okay, here are some places that maybe I want to make some changes, and do I feel like now's the time to do that?
Beautiful. So the link for that will be below. It is at gaylnowak.com/talk-to-your-heart. Click the link below. Gayle, what parting wisdom do you have for people? What would you like to share in this moment?
This idea of being your true self, and speaking what's true for you, it's really been for me, and also I now see it as an invitation to relate to others from a place of faith rather than fear.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you
so much. Thanks for being here. Thank you for who you are in the world. Don't forget to go and get the gift, Talk to Your Heart, and you'll be on Gayle's newsletter and be able to know what she's up to in the world. Thank you. And we'll see you next time. Hello and welcome. I have a very special interview here today that's a little outside of the conversations we normally have here. I'm here with certified sourced leader, Julia Bernadsky, and we want to talk about leadership, but we're going to talk about leadership in a little bit different way, specifically leadership in Ukraine. And I'm going to start just by sharing a little bit about Julia. And Julia, you can see she's got the Ukraine symbolism on and has been dressed in blue and yellow for a year almost. And we're going to talk about that and really what we can learn from what's happening in Ukraine, how we can help, and wherever else this conversation takes us. So I just want to share a little bit about Julia. She is the founder of Untamed Hearts. I really should have worn some Untamed Hearts jewelry today. I have a bunch of it. And she is the creator of Untame Your Heart. Her work is all about teaching people to understand and speak the language of energy
and create their lives and businesses with no fear or limitations. She believes that your power lies in your energy. Your strength comes from your intention. For the past 33 years, Julia has lived in New York, and she was born in Kiev, Ukraine. A lot of her very close people are under attack, fighting for their lives, for their children, for the independence of their country, for freedom, and for life itself. Julia's heart has been breaking over the last 9+ months for the people of Ukraine and really for the world. And, you know, we come from an energy perspective here. We come from this awareness that everything is sourced. And then we see war, we experience war, and we go like, why? Why? And what is up with that? I know, Julia, as I've seen you support your people and navigate this experience of war in your home country, I've learned a lot. I've done my own inner work on the war within myself as a result of the work you're doing, which I believe shifts the energy on the planet. And I've been deeply inspired by your take on the leadership in Ukraine. So with that, where would you like to begin?
I'd like to begin with just taking a moment for all of us, wherever you are, whether you're watching us live or replay, just take a moment and drop it into your heart. I'm doing it for myself, just to ground myself right now, but also for all of us, just to get really present to the conversation about war, about attack, about war that possibly is happening within each one of us. One of the things that I've discovered, and I'd like to begin, if you don't mind, with personal, is the first place to look for the war is inside. Somehow, I feel personally that I'm responsible for the world, but not in the way that I carry the whole world on my shoulders, but in the way that energetically we all contribute to what is happening in the world. Energetically, the world is our movie. So when I look at what's happening in the world, the first place I look inside. And the work that I personally, on a very personal level, am doing is to dealing with the war inside of me. You said something that, Darla, most of the people are asking themselves, like, this war, like, why? Why did we need to face this? Why so harsh? Why so painful? Why so much suffering? I don't know the answer. I don't know why these innocent people, the innocent children, the old people, why they needed to die, why they need to suffer right now, the way they're suffering right now. I don't know. But I do know that Ukraine is teaching the whole world a lot right now. One of the biggest lessons that I see, and there are so many, is the consciousness of unity, the energy of peace. Yes, Ukraine is in the war, but the war is, they're defending their country. They're not attacking, and it's a very big difference. So they are defending their country, and it's the most human, the most normal reaction. But at the same time, the consciousness of that is peace. The reason why they're doing it is because they want to bring peace to their land. They want to have independence, and they are, and they always will be independent country. They're doing everything that any normal human being would do to defend their lives, their children. And we witnessing the choice. Every one of us has a choice, and like in our lives, it's just like a reflection in our lives. Like sometimes we say, oh, I didn't have a choice. Like, no, we always have a choice. And Ukraine had a choice too. And they chose to stand up to the biggest bully of the world. They chose, if they have to, we're gonna lose our lives, but we will not give up our independence and our freedom. And that's a huge lesson to the world. There's so many countries who tried and they couldn't come through because Russia is the biggest bully of the world. They've done it many times. And what I would really like people to see is that whatever is happening with the person in Ukraine, it is happening with us right here, right now. And this consciousness of being one, we are one. We are not separated from each other. And some people can feel it energetically. Some people can feel it when their pocket is touched. In different ways, we are experiencing, whether or not we're aware of it, or we will be present to how much it affects every single one of us. So Ukrainian people they're courageous beyond measure. They took upon themselves to fight for the whole world. But right now, the difference between winning and losing is our support.
Yeah. And Julia, we'll talk about that in a minute. You know, what can we do? How Untamed Hearts is helping, the different resources that you can provide. I wanted to ask a couple of questions. I'd love to hear just a little bit your own experience, coming to the US and now being in the US and, having friends that are back home. Just what would you like to share with people about your own journey to kind of get to know you personally?
Yes. So I left Soviet Union. So when I left to immigrate to America, I was 19 years old. What the country I left was Soviet Union. I was born in Kiev, Ukraine. I grew up in Ukraine, but it was part of Soviet Union empire. And that's what they separated themselves from. And that's what they're fighting for right now, to stay independent. So when I left, I was 19 years old, I was pregnant, 9 months pregnant, having contractions. Nobody knew about it. Officials didn't know about it. And I managed to get on the plane. And from that point on, I just knew all I want to do is to get on the plane and get to the country that is free. So my journey was leaving a lot of friends back in Ukraine, relatives, and I don't know how far we went to go with that, but right now, I think most important, my experience right now, I speak with people who are very dear to my heart. And I've met a lot of people who I became friends with through this experience of helping Ukraine in any way that we can from here, to support them from here. So my friends, I speak with them almost every day. And what is happening right now, they're being bombed all the time. And so just to bring it out to a more of a big picture view, what's happening right now, the civilians and civilian infrastructure is being affected, is being attacked. So what they are trying to do, they try to make people suffer. The winter is coming, it's very cold there. And so they are heating, and when I say they, I mean Russian aggressors. They're heating the infrastructure in Ukraine that affects hospitals, affects electricity, affects water. And because it's winter and it's very cold, it's an extremely difficult situation there right now. And I speak with my friends every day. And when I speak with them, I hear the bombs going off. I hear people being killed in front of them. I'm someone who feels everything through my body. Yeah. It goes through me. And I feel like it's not fair to say for me because I'm here, but I feel that everything is going through me. I feel it so deeply. I feel the pain of people. I feel the despair. I feel the fear. And what people say is we are afraid. We don't have the light. It's extremely difficult to be in the darkness. And it's a blackout for, like, the one time there was blackout for more than 50 hours. Imagine all the buildings with a lot of floors. Imagine old people. Imagine hospitals, people who are on life support, who depend from the life support. Imagine little children. So all of that is such a huge test to them. It's so difficult. So my experience is not theirs. It's not I cannot possibly say it's their experience, but I feel so deeply the pain that they're going through right now. And not only them, I speak with soldiers. I know what's going on at the front line because we work with soldiers a lot. And so the conditions and what people are going through needlessly, with absolutely, there's no reason for this to be happening. We could have stopped this war.
Julia, your jewelry business is called Untamed Hearts. I know you're wearing some of your pieces.
Yes.
And your coaching and your energy work is about untaming your heart as a leader.
Yes.
And I've heard you speak about this. I thought it was so beautiful. The Time Person of the Year of Zelenskyy. And I've heard you speak about his leadership and this place of leading with the heart, of allowing the heart to lead and having a model of this different type of leadership. And I feel that it really connects to your personal mission and passion. Can you share a little bit about this and what you would hope people would take from that different type of leadership?
Yes. Thank you, Darla, for focusing on that, because it's one of the most important things. What is happening in the world, the leadership in the world right now, the way it is right now, doesn't work. The testimony of it is the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine should have never happened. Even if or at least it should have never continued for almost, on February 24, it's going to be a year. So it's like 9 months now, right? So the fact that the world allowed it and didn't stop it is a testimony that something is really not working with how we are leading in the world. I'm so proud and I'm so happy, and I take it so personally. It was like I was rooting for my own child when I saw that Zelenskyy won, being the person of the year, and he was on the cover of New York Times Magazine. So it at the same time, when on one side we see how leadership doesn't work, but on the other side we see how Ukraine, what is happening in Ukraine, the way Zelenskyy is leading this attack on Ukraine, is dealing with this war. He is not dealing with it as a regular politician. He is dealing with it as a person who deeply cares about life of every single human being. He is not accepting any of the bullshit. I'm sorry for that word, but political bullshit. He does not. He faces it in a way that politicians are shocked sometimes. And what's amazing is that people who were not supporting Ukraine are now being converted. People, I mean politicians and I mean institutions, they're being converted into supporters because their hearts start to open up. The UK, for example, the Prime Minister actually visited Ukraine, and after that visit, everything changed completely. When he saw what he saw, when he heard what he heard, his relationship to what is happening had changed. So Ukraine is teaching the whole world. Ukraine becoming like this, like the light is being shined on what doesn't work. And then it's teaching, it's showing the whole world that we cannot accept the old ways of being, the old ways of leading, submissions, going by the rules of old institutions that are becoming completely obsolete, that have nothing to do with caring for people, but have everything to do with caring for money and politics. So
can you speak a little bit about that, the leadership from the heart versus the old style of leadership?
Yes. So did you guys know, and probably many of you know, that Zelenskyy is not a politician? Yes, he has a degree in law, but he is an actor. He is more of a normal human being. Not that politicians are not, but they have a certain way of thinking, that logic is guiding everything. Actor, I can imagine it's somebody who needs to be able to feel people, to feel the character. And I think that ability to feel comes from the intelligence of the heart. It comes from being untamed, not following the rules of what the old systems are brainwashed people for centuries. New leadership that he is becoming a face of is guided by the intelligence of the heart. Ukraine, if you think about the whole world, Ukraine is the heart of the world right now. Not only that it's in the heart of the world, it's an untamed heart of the world. It's a place where people made a choice that is the hardest choice. And what I was trying to say, and I know I went for a little bit too much of an emotional place inside of me, but what I was really trying to say is, as my friends are telling me how scared they are, the next sentence goes, we will not give up. They will not break us. And those are the women who holding babies on their hands. They're saying that they will not break us. We are scared. They're very scared. They're human beings. Just like imagine the bomb is, a lot of bombs are exploding right around you. Imagine that. It's a normal thing to be scared, but it's not always something that people say immediately. We will not give up. We will not give in. They will not break us. So this is the place of being untamed. This is a place for standing up for your freedom and independence, not theoretically, not as a nice sentence, but as a way of being.
Well, there's so much to unpack there. You know, you talked about, say, the Prime Minister of the UK and the old way, and then his heart being opened through the experience. And so you spoke to the old way, right? We can think of the patriarchy or the leadership that has been, and it being logical.
Yes.
And not heart-based. And I'm just curious if you can speak a little bit more to that, like the way that this demonstration of following an untamed heart might start to make change.
I think that the war in Ukraine is very unfortunately, I don't want to call it a teaching tool, but it's a wake-up call at the very least for the humanity. And if Zelenskyy or if Ukraine chose a path of logic, they would be nowhere.
Why? Say more about that.
Okay. Because logically, they had no chance from in the beginning of the war to win. What happened was energy happened. Energy that comes from the, like, nothing will move us. We will not give in. This is our land. That doesn't come from logic. Logic tells you run, hide, save yourself, save yourself, save your physical body. What comes in place is something that is higher than physical body, energy that is higher than physical body, energy that is stronger than fear. And that is the intelligence of the heart. That is when your heart becomes untamed, when you have nothing to lose. We don't have to, by the way, as humanity, to be pushed to that place. But that's pretty much what it shows us. We become that when we have nothing to lose. We can choose to become that sooner. And so
because I think about how often do we cling to safety,
yeah,
rather than follow our heart.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's life and death. And I would say in many cases, it's life and death for our soul, for our aliveness, for our spirit.
Yeah. It is. It's so many times. In my personal life, I've experienced it many times. It's kind of like when we say we're going to start from nothing again. That's kind of death of everything that was before. We're going to start from nothing again. We need to become like children. We need to turn off the logic that tells us, you know this, and you know this, and you know this. We need to pure again. We need to be like children who are ready whose hearts are open by default. By the way, they are the closest to the Creator. And we need to become and make choices that are aligned with the truth of our souls, not with the fear, that are not allowing the fear to drive us, not allowing the logic to limit us. So the logic is an amazing thing, and there's a place for it, but it's a place very often that creates limitations. When you are in a place when you totally aligned, people could say with your truth, people could say with your purpose, people could say with your soul, people could say with the life itself. You will know exactly what to do and which choices to make. Ukraine found themselves in that place. Yeah.
When we're talking about what, the kind of the big picture lessons here, and then I know you're talking with people on the front lines all the time. How can we help? Because I know it's like talking about it, getting visibility, letting people know what's happening. It's kind of, been hot in the news and then not in the news, and the media is controlling the narrative in certain ways. So I would love to hear you speak a little bit about that. Like, how can we help? And what have you seen about the way the media has been a part of this conversation?
Yes. So in the beginning, like the whole media went crazy. They were all like unleashed. People were untamed. Again, they went with the heart. They went with the truth, and they were covering the what's happening in Ukraine. And all of a sudden, it became quiet for whatever reason. Right now, because Zelenskyy won. I think partially because he won a Person of the Year award. I think that brings again a lot of light to the situation, and a lot of people want to cover it. But then people get fatigued from hearing about war. It's too painful. It's too much. Enough already. Like a lot of people, there's a saying, the hungry one, the one who has a lot to eat, I'm butchering the translation, but the one who has a lot to eat will never understand the hungry one. So sometimes we become the ones who have a lot of comfort, and so one of the things is to talk about it, to pray for Ukraine, to speak about it, even if you don't hear it in the news. We need to keep the conversation alive. It's very important to keep Ukraine in front, because right now, I said it before, but it really is. I spoke with a guy who's a soldier, and you see battalion that he's in the news all the time, and he told me, like, we need support right now more than ever before. We need the government level support. We need like US support. We need European support. We need them to give us what we need to finish this war, right? What can we do? And so this is I can share with you what I do with Untamed Hearts. We, from the day one, we created a piece, a necklace. I have with me like 2 colors of it. It's a necklace bracelet. I'm wearing it as a bracelet and the necklace. And in my work, I said, there's no more business as usual until we win this war, until this is all over. And so my whole family started to make these pieces, and I took it to all my shows. I ask all people who are connected to Untamed Hearts one way or another to consider contributing by buying this, and 100% of this goes to Ukraine. It says, like, this little pendant says Untamed Hearts, and on the other side it says Peace for All. Peace for All is something that from the beginning of Untamed Hearts, from beginning of existence of Untamed Hearts, we stamped Peace for All. It was way before war. It was in 2016. And the whole inspiration behind Untamed Hearts was to be a portal to speak for peace. We want peace in the world. To have peace in the world, we need unity. So Ukraine is showing us just that. The consciousness of oneness, of everybody coming together, the whole world coming together, people inside of Ukraine coming together. We are so physically far away from Ukraine, but our help makes a huge difference. So as people are buying these necklaces, they're only $42. I do have another style that is a little bit more expensive, but this one only $42 each. It adds up. And we raised, I don't know, I didn't do the latest numbers, but we raised more than $15,000. We sent so much things that soldiers needed, just because of us coming together as collective consciousness and giving our energy, giving our knowledge, giving our donations, buying this. And that's how materially I can measure what I can do on your behalf, altogether what we can do. And sending, I have a list from every time. I have a new list of things that they need. Right now, we just bought 3 very special computers that are going to be used on the front line. Also, as a result of raising money from these necklaces. And Darla, stop me if I'm, saying too much about it.
Well,
but
I have one. I don't know why I didn't put it on today. They're beautiful, and the link will be below this video, so people can go order, get them for gifts.
Yes,
100% goes right to the front lines.
100%.
And that's not something that's necessarily easy to do. You had to find a way to be able to get these supplies in to the front lines.
Yes, and I have a logistics. We created the logistics, and we have a whole team of people who work together. We get things that they need, and right now there are 2 most important things. One is whatever the soldiers will tell me, and some of it is extreme cold. Clothing, for military clothing. Then we get in computers, shoes, sleeping bags, but very special military grade sleeping bag. Everything is military grade. And then there's another thing that we're doing right now. We just sending people, and I know people personally, so I know that nothing is stolen, nothing disappears. It goes directly to people. Lights that are chargeable from USB and then stay, like I found the light that stays up for 300 hours. My friends like I send it to them and they're like, oh my God, it's amazing. So like, just think about like what makes them the happiest right now. We have light when it's dark. And then power banks, we're sending power banks, we're sending warm things to people because winter is extremely cold and it's scary. We're sending some soups and things like that. So we just need to get winter ready, and we need to get through it no matter what. And for that, we need your support. And if you consider supporting Ukraine, please consider doing it through Untamed Hearts. And
can you speak to how else they can support through you?
So invite me to speak on any stages. I have spoken a lot, and it's never enough. The more of us speak, the more we spread the consciousness of oneness. The more of us, like each one of us, a little light, and we're creating this web of protection around Ukraine. We have different projects. And when we speak about it, even right now, when you're receiving this information, when you're hearing me speak, on whatever replay you're hearing it, we are sending energy to Ukraine. So there is invisible energetic field that we are creating by raising awareness, by talking about it, by praying, by supporting each other with our emotions about what is happening. Because by dealing with what stirs that war inside of us, we're dealing with the war inside of us. And remember that we need to start within.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm really present to, there's the practical, just like anything, there's the practical, and then there's the spiritual. And it feels to me, I'm curious your thoughts, it feels to me pretty unpredictable that Ukraine is still defending freedom.
Yeah, we could have
and
never.
Yet, yeah, and here we are, almost 10 months later. And I think you believe this also, that's energy. And that the energy of the heart is more powerful than that of logic or that of cruelty or domination or power over. And, that's easy to say and hard to remember sometimes, but it feels really true in this case, as I've, followed the activities of the war through you. So what would you like to say about that as we close here?
I would like to say that, first of all, the testimony to the leadership of the world, I'm going to bring it back there, is leading from the heart, is what Ukraine is doing right now, is an example for every single one of us, how we can make choices in our personal lives, how we can choose to listen to that inner knowing inside of us that is coming from the intelligence of your heart, not your logic. I would like to invite everybody, and I never said this, I don't know if I do say, I work with people. The program that I created is Untame Your Heart, where I work with people, and we really focus on all that. We focus on what is driving our lives. Where are you coming from? Where are you making your choices from? And to be in a place when you are making decisions and choices in your life from the place of no fears and no limitations. And the reason why I think it's so relevant right now, and why it's so relevant to the conversation about Ukraine, is because what Ukraine is doing, what leadership of Ukraine is doing, they are making decisions. They are speaking with the world. They are choosing from a place of no fears and limitations, no limitations, even though They had nothing. They didn't have enough. Like, you cannot imagine how every soldier needed to be dressed. They didn't have anything. They needed weapons. They needed protection for their bodies. They didn't have anything. And yet they didn't speak. They didn't bend their heads. They didn't speak from a place of fears or limitations. And just like that, as a whole big conversation on its own. But we can see this.
Would you say that each person who untames their heart individually, even if you're not at war, shifts this consciousness and helps Ukraine?
Yes, thank you, Darla. Thank you for putting that perspective. So every time you do it inside of you, every time you create from the place of no fear, no limitation, every time you allow yourself, it is something to allow yourself to untame your heart, and you can call it whatever you want to call it. It doesn't necessarily have to be those 2 words, 3 words. But when you become internally liberated, free, and you create your life from that place, you are contributing to the life. You're contributing to the scale of light. Right now, this war, there's darkness and there's light. And every time we succeed, businesses that mean good for everybody, when we win, when we become relevant, we help to make the systems that don't work obsolete. So when you succeed and you have projects that create good, that have consciousness of peace, that have message of peace, that create something for people where everybody can win. And we know a lot of those businesses in our surroundings. When you become relevant, when you grow, when you expand, by sheer volume of us, we gonna make the systems that don't work obsolete. So start within, bring it into your communities, into your families, into your countries, bring it into your businesses. How do we do it in our business? We can do it. We can create new world. I believe that truly.
Thank you. So we'll have the link directly to buy the necklace and bracelet below this video. Julia, if someone wants to do the work of untaming their heart, what's their right step?
I'm going to leave a link also, and they can book a session with me. They can get in touch with me. Maybe I'll leave my phone number down. I will write my phone number down so you can text me, and I will give you all the information you need to know.
Okay, so we'll put that information on how to access Julia for an Untame Your Heart session below this video as well. So we've covered a lot of ground, from the impact on the heart of hearing the bombs in the background, of thinking of children in the darkness, of remembering that this is continuing to go on, and keep it in our awareness when it's easier to forget. And we've talked about leadership and leadership from the heart, and this heart-based leadership being on the world stage, and the hope and the possibility of that. Is there anything you would like to leave people with?
I just want to send you love. This is the highest vibration of energy. I want you to feel it, and I want you to share it with people around you. And I want to thank you, Darla, for giving me the stage and the moment to speak about this. I love you. Thank you.
I love you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Please like and share this video. That's one thing you can do to help get this message out. If you have an audience that Julia can come speak to, please reach out as well. This is Darla Ledoux, founder of Sourced, and may untaming your heart help you to shift the field. Bye, everyone.